Dylan is a Year 11 student who is physically late maturing in comparison to his age-related peers. He originally excelled in basketball, drama and mathematics in his early years in high school, with ambitions from his parents to receive a scholarship to attend a prestigious university in the United States. However, Dylan has withdrawn from his studies and is currently engaging in high-risk behaviours such as smoking, truanting and stealing. And he no longer associates with pro-social peers and is performing poorly in subjects. So Dylan's parents are very concerned in his current decline in his welfare, and they've contacted us as Dylan's year advisors and are seeking advice on how we can potentially help him.
To assist Dylan, cognitive development was chosen to further support him. Strategies were assessed to best suit his situation, for instance, implementing Pigot's theory in cognitive development. Appropriate strategies designed to increase Dylan's cognitive behaviour is one of the areas that we'll be focusing on. According to Pigot, cognitive development happens in stages which include characteristics of the formal operational stage, logic, abstract thought, problem solving, and observations about the formal operational stage. Ways of implementing these stages are to delegate homework to Dylan, which includes his interests such as basketball. This assessment will have him critically evaluate performance situations in this area. Dylan will be asked to present these thoughts to the teacher or class, which encourages him to explain his or others' reasoning, which allows him to exercise cognitive development. In order to improve his problem-solving skills, using questions that deal with the why aspect of a situation is beneficial as it gets him to critically think. Provide feedback on strategies used by students, and also modeling for Dylan and students to observe and create their own ideas. By doing this, he learns by observing how other students correctly solve certain problems, rather than focusing on how teacher or an expert would solve them. Furthermore, allow him to reflect on his own strategies. This metacognitive strategy training method allows students to develop better reasoning abilities as they evaluate their own work. Allow time for peer review in order to have him compare his work. This lets Dylan view different perspectives in solving problems. According to Pigot, argument promotes reasoning ability as well as metacognition. Implement argumentation skills during class by requiring students in groups to defend their statements and reasons where all students have the opportunity to talk. Class discussions are an excellent way to do this. By adding these teaching strategies, it will benefit Dylan's autonomy, leading to exercise cognitive development, which will benefit inside and outside the classroom. However, there may be disadvantages in the proposed approaches, as Dylan may be shy or don't wish to contribute to debates. Some students don't require the same confidence in presenting their own ideas, even if they have good information to contribute. Also, in some cultures, creating argument in a debate, even if it's just simply to clarify your side and doesn't involve violence, is still considered rude. He may even lose confidence by watching other peers correctly solve problems if their problem-solving skills isn't as advanced as his.
Dylan has become withdrawn and is isolating himself from his peers, and this can be due to developing his own identity, and this is why he's wanting to experiment with different clothes and different friend groups and not associating with pro-social peers, thus why he may be partaking in risk-taking behaviour. So it's not uncommon for teenagers to want to experience new things, and it often involves thrill-seeking or risk-taking behaviours. So teenagers need to explore their own limits and abilities as well as their boundaries that are set by yourself, and they want to express themselves. As part of the teenage brain, the handle planning and impulse control doesn't completely mature until about the age of 25. So this is the result of teenagers can sometimes be more likely to make quick decisions without always thinking about the consequences. And this can be why Dylan is partaking in particularly risky behaviours such as smoking, drinking, and not doing so well in class. He's trying to push the boundaries. You can utilize the GRIP method to support Dylan with his social development. The GRIP method is one that is implemented to support troubled youth. We've identified signs of risk-taking behaviour as he's been withdrawn from class, truanting, smoking and stealing, as well as not socialising with pro-social peers anymore. We should begin by chatting to Dylan about his recent behaviour in class and the poor performance he's currently having in his subjects. Continually showing empathy for Dylan's situation and asking if there's anything that we can do to assist him. Next, we'll refer to Dylan to the school counsellor for further assistance, but continually checking on his progress and involving his parents throughout this process is imperative to ensure continued support is instilled at home and at school. Finally, creating a positive school environment that supports Dylan, continually providing him with positive feedback, providing Dylan with a supportive school environment is imperative to success. This can be done by dedicating time at least once or twice a month to collaborate with all of Dylan's teachers and counsellor to discuss his progress and implement strategies they think that may assist in his learning.
One of the main areas identified of development was moral development. Because Dylan has ambitions to receive a scholarship from a prestigious university in the United States, it is important that he's able to make right decisions that will not lead to setbacks on his path. Decisions that are related to the high-risk taking behaviour he has been partaking in are the focus of the moral development strategies. We are aiming to strengthen understanding of morals, how they affect decision-making, and how individuals have responsibilities at all levels to uphold their moral decision-making according to Kohlberg's theory of moral development. The theory describes that decisions are beyond simply choosing right or wrong, but how the decisions are made and what influences those decisions. We're aiming to develop positive school-to-parent relationships and create a healthy environment for Dylan's moral development to the highest standards at home and at school. There are a few advantages and disadvantages related to this strategy. The advantages include increased comprehension of why morals are important, how they affect decisions for the short term and long term. The strategies will develop understanding of how emotion and emotional maturity take part in the development of moral responsibilities. It will create beneficiary relationships between students and parents, and the parents to the school toward developing morals. Disadvantages include the authority of the school and parents on Dylan becoming overbearing, creating opposition from Dylan or an unwillingness to change.
Throughout this unit, I learned the complexity that is involved in adolescents' lives in terms of how they develop. Being a teacher is beyond just sticking to the curriculum, pedagogy, and the syllabus, but having an understanding on the adolescent's development and how it affects their behaviour is crucial, as it determines how you deliver a lesson. For instance, how they learn, think, judge, and problem solve. Cognitive development addresses learning through the information processing, reasoning, and memory. It is also important that teachers have the knowledge of how information is perceived, processed, stored, and received to understand how students learn and how instruction can be made more effective. Students' cognitive processes influence the nature of what is learned, so it is beneficial to relate the subject you are teaching them to something they already know, as new information is retained easily when they can relate to it. For instance, teaching movements that relate to a sport they play. So I've learned that it is important for teachers to consider what they want their students to learn and how they can deliver that content most effectively. Furthermore, cognitive load should be considered as our conscious and attention is limited. There are elements of the cognition load that we as teachers need to try to consider in planning a lesson, for instance, the redundancy. An example of this is presenting a PowerPoint, reading it word by word. Students start to disengage and start to lapse in attention. Another element I would like to try to avoid is cognitive overload. We have two types of memory capacity, which include the working memory and long-term memory. Working memory is relatively limited and can quickly overload, whereas long-term memory has greater capacity, however, requires information to come through the working memory. Teachers should also avoid giving too much information and activities to learners. For instance, when teaching students how to play a game, give instructions in sections and use demonstration. Otherwise, students will lose attention and focus. It should be understood that adolescents haven't developed the frontal lobe of the brain, which isn't developed until they are 25. This is responsible for judgment, decision making, attention, and inhibition. Teachers also need to improve students' self-control and limit distractions.
In this unit, I have learned that the definition of adolescence changes throughout cultures. It is not particularly bound by age, levels of physical development, and/or gender. There are many features that affect adolescence and create its uniqueness. Some of the underlying biological factors that create this uniqueness are those that affect the onset of puberty, which is a key factor in the identification of adolescence. Biological factors interrelate with some cognitive factors such as brain development. Brain development is vital to adolescence. It affects how adolescents make their decisions and what stages of development students may need to make moral decisions as to their behaviour and whether or not to engage in risk-taking behaviour. Risk-taking behaviour is not just about cognitive and moral development. It involves who students' peers are, as well as their ages, and whether or not they engage in risk-taking behaviour. In the unit, we also learned about adolescence in the schooling environment, how to assist learning at each developmental stage, as well as being able to work with students and parents to develop positive coping strategies and aiding students that are in difficult situations related to their social and schooling environments. And finally, I have learned what it is to be a teacher, a mentor, a guide, to help students thrive in and out of the school environment.
I have learned about why adolescents take risks and that this is something I'll need to consider in a school setting as a PDHP teacher. It will be my role to teach about coping strategies as adolescents are going through many changes which contribute to low social and emotional well-being. Group work in Vygotsky's theory of scaffolding and zone of phenomenal development will help in my teaching practices. Knowing students can work better in groups is something I'll need to keep in mind when developing my programs as a PDHP teacher. So it's our role to ensure students understand the consequences in partaking in activities that involve risks, such as smoking, illegal substance abuse, unprotected sex, and dangerous driving. I feel it's important to ensure students have a supportive environment that supports their social and emotional learning, giving students the tools and strategies to cope with stress and manage emotions by instilling positive coping strategies whilst also being a positive role model for students. As adolescence is a time for teens to develop templates for adult relationships and what they look like, it's important for me as a teacher to create a positive environment in the classroom that develops relationships between peers and teachers. And lastly, as adolescence is a time students experiment with their individual identity, it's important as a PDHP teacher to fully support students through this transition as they experiment with their appearance, sound, and behaviour, guiding them to ensure experimentation doesn't go too far and place the adolescents at risk of danger. So it's also imperative to assist students in understanding how to have responsible decision-making skills, enabling them to analyse situations, assume personal responsibility, and respect others around them, whilst also being able to self-manage their emotions and have strategic goal-setting skills so they are always in a positive environment and prevent risk-taking behaviours that may end in dangerous behaviour. And as a PDHP teacher, it's important to continually provide a positive learning environment to support adolescents.